97.3 The Fan.
An Odyssey sports station. It's that time, Friar Faithful. Time to discuss everything going on with the Padres. We've gathered the entire 97.3 The Fan crew together to bring you the most in-depth discussion on the Friars in our weekly Padres Roundtable, presented by San Diego Roundtable Pizza. Here's your host, Ben Higgins.
And we are back. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our 97.3 The Fan Padres Roundtable, presented by San Diego Roundtable Pizza, with a slightly different cast of characters. But I wanted to start by apologizing to all of San Diego, let down last week because we didn't have a roundtable. I'm sorry. We chose to air the Padres game last week instead of preempting it in favor. I think people would rather hear us talking about the team than actually listening to a game. But we're back and should be good to go for the next Thursdays. Let's introduce the cast this week, because with Tony Gwynn Jr. traveling and Woodsy in quarantine, we've got a couple of replacements this week. But we got our regulars, Chris Ello.
Regular.
We've got Craig Elston.
Still here.
Annie Halbrin.
Hello, Ben.
And joining this week, very excited to have Braden Soprenitz.
What's going on?
And Matt Scraby.
Hello,
here on the
everyone.
Roundtable. All right, let's jump right in. Obviously, Padres have been playing good baseball over the Mike Schilt, we know the Padres have been playing good baseball over the last 3 to 4 weeks, winning 7 of the last 9 series. We're all
made that clear.
Very positive about it. And Mike Schilt had some, I don't know if I would say testy reactions, but certainly confrontational answers following the 9-1 loss to the Marlins on Wednesday, when he said, why aren't we talking about the positivity? Why aren't we talking about a team that is playing well? So my first question to you guys today, and I'll start with you, Chris. Yeah. Do we as a fan base, do we in the media focus too much on the negative about the San Diego Padres rather than the positive?
I don't know if we listen to the fans who listen to our station that think we're paid by the team and we're way too kind and way too positive. Now all of a sudden we're not positive enough. I think, I'm going to stick up for my guy, A.J. Cassavell. I think he had every right to ask the question he did. The Padres, I was thinking about this today. They've won 7 of the 9 series, which everybody's made very clear. Their record during that time is 16-12. So they haven't necessarily run away and hid from the division during this stretch of games. And I liken what they've done to somebody who's got a 25-game hitting streak but goes 1 for 4 every game. You've got a 25-game hitting streak, but you're still hitting 250. They have yet to put together a good stretch of 5 or 6 or 7 ball games. They haven't swept a series. I think it's fair to ask the manager, when he expects that to happen, or if he's at least looking to it, because his answer almost made us feel like 2 out of 3 is okay. In a lot of ways, if you watch the way they played yesterday, the Padres seemed to think 2 out of 3 was okay as well. Because they didn't play very well in that game.
Yeah, Craig, do we overreact to every loss? Are we over-emotional as baseball fans? Or is Mike Schilt not understanding the mentality of fans and how we do think?
I think there's a general lack of accountability in stepping up after you lose by 8 runs and completely get bombed off your home field, which is something that happened more than once during a 6-game homestand. The homestand started with a blowout loss and it ended with a blowout loss. And walking in and pretending like what we just watched was great, or being like, "Hey, I said it's not clean, so therefore you can't say anything else." So no. I don't think what I think is that in the media, we're in the day-to-day content business. So we do ride the waves every day. And what does this team give us? High, low, high, win, win, lose, lose, win, win, lose, lose. You went through it today on your show. 3-3, 2-4, 4-2, 3-3. So don't pretend that you're playing great baseball when you're playing 500 baseball. Show accountability when the time is right.
Annie, Mike Schilt, just from the last couple of months, just seeing how he has reacted. Is he being reasonable in his takes about how we talk about his team?
I think that there's a few things to remember with Mike Schilt. One, he's looking at how far maybe the team has come since the dysfunction of last year. He is also looking at players in terms of, we had a conversation on the field about this last week for a long time. The only time he really gets upset with a player, he said, is if they see an opportunity and they don't take it. And I was like, well, even if they run into an out, even if it's not a good play, He doesn't care. He wants it to be a teachable moment. He wants them to get better so that when they do get into those situations in the postseason, if they make it, or later in the season in big games, they feel the trust and the aggression to be able to go for it. But so take that mentality and now extend it later into these post-game pressers. That is kind of the lens that he's viewing it is, wait a second, we've been doing some really good things. It wasn't like us to have those errors. So overall, we're playing good baseball. Now, I do not have any issue. And those questions need to continue to be asked by AJ Cassavell, by Kevin Acee, by whoever's in those post-game press conferences, because that is the job of the media. And I don't know that it was I just don't think that there was any problems with that. The way that he views it is through a different lens, but that doesn't mean that the way that we view it shouldn't be the lens that we view it. And can I just say one more thing on that? When he was with the Cardinals, he came from a winning organization that won all the time. So they had the benefit of the doubt. You're going to get back to your winning ways. This is not that. This is the opposite of that. They don't win all the time. So if he wants the benefit of the doubt to slant toward winning, they have to do that and prove that to the fans before it can go that direction.
Yeah, it's a good point. I know he was in the organization last year, but this was a team last year that couldn't win more than 3 games in a row until September. This year, yeah, they have the 1 4-game winning streak, but we as fans have come to now expect that they're not going to put these long strings together. Now, Matt Scraby, I've been monitoring your social media, and I saw that you kind of nodded in acknowledgement of Mike Schilt that, okay, well, I mean, if they do keep winning series like they've been doing lately, that's okay. You don't have to sweep series as long as you keep winning. You seem to kind of say, all right, let's give Mike Schilt the benefit of the doubt here.
Yeah, and the reason I do that is because he's right. They're playing better baseball right now. They're not losing 5 in a row, 6 in a row. They're just losing, 1 out of 3. And that could change. It could go the other way. But I really think that Mike Schilt needs to stay in the big picture mindset, and that's what he's doing. He's looking at the entire season and not just right now. And I understand why AJ Cassavell asked those questions, and I'm glad that AJ Cassavell asked those questions because they're fair questions, and I said that last night. But Mike Schilt, he has to keep his, they're fighting to stay 500, and he has to keep his team in the mindset of we're still in this. We still have a long way to go. And so that's what I think he's doing. He's defending his team, and he's the one out front saying, we're okay, guys. Like, let's just keep doing what we're doing.
Braden, I think Woods and I have talked about this before. Since our professional football team left, we treat our baseball team a little more like a football team than we used to, where each game feels way more important than it did 10, 15 years ago. So we react more like we're reacting on a Monday morning after a loss that, of course, feels like, oh, now we got to wait a whole other week until there's a game. Well, baseball's a different sort of sport. Are we overreacting too much to individual Padres games over a very long season?
I think a couple of times this year we have done that, and I think you're going to get that for the majority of the season just because of, how emotionally involved this fan base is with this team. I mean, this is the only, major professional show in town. I mean, I know we got a lot of other minor league teams in town, but the one that's big that a lot of people resonate with is the San Diego Padres. So there's going to be a lot of overreacting, even when they win. I mean, when they win games, we got, people are standing in line for World Series tickets, ready to go. I think yesterday is a little bit different from a standpoint of it's the way that the team played yesterday. It's the way that they had an opportunity to sweep a team for the first time all season. It's the whole lack of, they haven't swept anybody all year, and we saw this last year. And I think a lot of last year is still in the minds of a lot of fans. It's in my mind as well. It's like, they gave them the benefit of the doubt last year because last year everybody's like, they're going to get it going. They got Juan Soto. They got Fernando Tatis Jr. They got Machado. They got this great pitching staff. They're going to turn it around, and they got duped at the end of the season, right? Because the narrative saying everything's going to be fine. We're fine. We're right around 500. Everything's fine. And then they missed the playoffs by a couple of games. This year, Padres fans are like, look, I don't want to sit through that entire season that we sat through last year, and this is unacceptable that the way that they played yesterday to a point where Mike Schultz talking about how great everything is. Here's the other thing: the 2 series they lost, they got swept. I mean, they got their what handed to them by the Rockies and the Phillies. And my other question too, and maybe this is a question for all of us, but what do we want out of this Padres season? Just make the playoffs? Like, if we're satisfied with just making the playoffs, then cool. Like, everything's great. They're a game above 500. They're right where they need to be. But if this town really wants a World Series, and I'm not saying this is a World Series caliber team, but you have to understand, like, it would be different if Mike Schilt gave that speech and he had the Phillies record or the Dodgers record or even the Royals record. If they had the Royals season this season, I could understand Mike Schilt. Hey, guys, we're doing fine right now. It was a tough game today. And I think a little bit of how they played yesterday is part of it too. If they would have lost to the Marlins by 1 run and played lights out, and you know what, Marlins just got us that day, I think it would have been a different story than your starter getting knocked out, your middle relief getting shelled, and your offense not showing up.
I thought it was also interesting that you go into the clubhouse and Jake Cronenworth said, there's still another gear we haven't found yet. And Manny Machado said, there's always a roller coaster in a baseball season. And we're kind of, you could look at it 2 ways, right? We're kind of smooth right now, but there hasn't been maybe huge drop-offs. You're not 11 games under 500 like the Mets, but there also haven't been high highs either, right? But the question AJ was asking was about that, like, having another gear to get to. And there were players in the clubhouse that acknowledged that.
It's our 97.3 The Fan Padres commercial-free roundtable presented by San Diego Roundtable Pizza. And there are plenty of positive stories that I think, if Mike Schilt is being fair, we have covered them. And as Braden said, maybe even overreacted to. And I want to talk about one of them in particular, and that is Matt Waldron and what he has done, especially lately from the number 5 spot. Craig, I consider you our Matt Waldron authority right now on the panel. So
did you write that tweet today that called him the greatest knuckleballer of all time? Did you have anything to do with that?
No. Is that a thing that actually exists?
Somebody tweeted that today, that he's in the running now for the greatest knuckleballer of all time. I immediately thought of
Phil
you.
Necro.
Well,
Phil's out of the running.
As Eno Saris did tell us, he did throw the hardest knuckleball of all time in recorded history in his last start, and that the knuckleballs over 80 are actually shown to be more effective, and he's throwing it more often, he's throwing it more effectively. So from what we have now seen from Matt Waldron, is his future now as a legitimate starter going forward in Major League Baseball? Has he established himself, or is he simply a guy that we're just waiting for? All right, waiting for that. Okay, he's going to struggle. Now we replace him with a rotation, which is what we kind of expected at the beginning of the year. Matt Waldron, you get the first chance for a few weeks, and then we'll try Johnny Brito, or we'll try Randy Vasquez, or we'll call up one of the minor leaguers. Is he now solidifying his spot as a big league starting pitcher?
Well, I think something real happened, which is that Ruben Niebla and Matt Waldron had a heart-to-heart. They had a sit-down that's now been reported out, through multiple outlets, where Niebla showed him the numbers, looked him in the eye, said, you've got a pitch that every kid wants to play in the video game. You've got a pitch that no pit hitter in the league wants to see.
And the Marlins looked lost.
Yeah,
the other
that
night
none of them
them.
have seen. There's no machine in the world that can replicate what you're doing, so they can't even practice against it. Embrace who you are. The Matt Waldron who came up was a reluctant prince. He didn't want to be a knuckleballer. He wanted to be a big league pitcher who just has a knuckleball. And you know what that guy does? He gets shelled around, and he gets knocked around a lot because his other pitches are all below average. His knuckleball is way above average as a major league pitch. It acts as a curve, a slider, a changeup, like kind of all at the same time. So a Waldron that's throwing 50% knuckleballs is a completely different guy than the one we debated like 4 roundtables ago. This is a real change. As long as it continues, I think he could have real success.
But Braden, knowing that the knuckleball will fail on certain days in certain conditions, as an overreacting fan base, can we tolerate a Matt Waldron that's just part of the Padres starting rotation now going forward?
Well, I think as long as the catcher catches it, we'll be in a good spot. But, to me with Matt Waldron, And Craig said his knuckleball is an elite pitch because of a couple of things. One, nobody has. That's such an advantage to have when you don't see it all the time. I mean, we talk about different situations where you go against pitchers in different divisions or different leagues and you don't see them ever, or the first time that you bring up a young pitcher and teams look lost. Like when Ryan Weathers came up in that playoff game in 2020, the Dodgers had never seen him before. And they can look at books all they want, and they looked lost against Ryan Weathers. And I think the same thing could be true about the knuckleball because they don't get to see it ever. Now, if there's a couple knuckleballers out there and you see knuckleballs all the time, you can make the adjustment and go after it. But the fact that he's the only knuckleball guy, I think he needs to, first of all, embrace it and go with it and be like, there it is, try to hit it. As you mentioned, nights that it's off, I think you're going to have a bad night. But here's the thing. When other pitchers are off It's a bad night. When Yu Darvish is not hitting his spots, the Yankees put up 4 home runs against him. So I think if he can continue to use this knuckleball as he's doing right now, he is a serviceable 5. He's good enough to get wins. And as long as, the catcher as long as he can try to break it down or at least knock it in front, it eliminates the guys just going around the bases every time somebody gets on. But again, if he has a bad outing with his knuckleball, it's like any other pitcher that has a bad outing with his bad pitches.
It's an interesting point, though, Chris, as the familiarity will increase with Matt Waldron, especially in the NL West, when you're facing teams more often. Can we just expect that knuckleball's novelty to start to wear off at some point?
I don't know. I mean, because, again, he's the only one in the league, right, who's throwing it. So they're not going to get a lot of familiarity, even the teams that face him 3 or 4 times. That's not a lot of at-bats. I mean, I think the Marlins could have stood up there all night with a tennis racket and not made a whole lot of contact the other night. They look completely befuddled. So, hopefully this keeps working for him. I think he's established himself in the rotation, which was kind of your original question. He's going to have some bad outings when the thing isn't working or he's not getting strikes, but falling way behind in the count. But, I mean, who you've got, give me a better option in the 5 spot than him right now. He's got a 1.96 ERA over the last month. Pretty good.
I mean, Annie, it's undoubtedly a fun pitch, especially when it's working. I mean, as a fan, I was at the game. I mean, it's a delight to see the other hitters flail at something that they can't hit that's not even being thrown very hard.
Even if they start to see him a little bit, if he's successful with it, the way it dances, you never know where it's going. So I think that he's in a great spot. Also, I like the fact that he has bettered it. He's made it faster. He has thrown it for strikes more. He has learned to use it in his pitch mix more, learned to use it to his advantage, learned to throw it more. So all of that tells me this guy is coachable. This guy wants to improve. He's learning from Ruben Niebla. I think it's his job to lose more than anyone's other job to win right now.
Matt, if you want to add on Matt Waldron, you can.
Yes, I did something on the Scraby Show last night called The Chronicles of Matt Waldron.
You did? Okay.
Yes.
Oh,
so
I thought it was the Chronicles of Matt Scraby.
Well, I'm trying to spin off it into different segments.
Got it,
but
okay.
I basically...
Finally,
You didn't have
realized
Craig
that
join you
that's
for
the
that?
name his
Oh,
show
that'd be
should
great.
be.
I know. Chris has been calling it what do you call it? The Scraby Chronicles.
Yeah.
So
The
now I'm
name of the
trying
show.
to... Yeah, it's not the name of the show. But what I went through and what I wanted to prove is that Matt Waldron all season long has been pitching with the pressure of being removed from the rotation, and he was the first guy out. And so when I was going through his game log, you see when he gives up 7 runs, and then he came right back and he locked it down. And then the last 3 starts he's struck out 25 guys, which is the second best in all of baseball. So he's getting stronger, and that I love that about him, that he's like you said, he's coachable. He's doing things that the coaching staff is telling him. He's throwing that knuckleball, and like Craig said, he's embracing the knuckleball. I gotta tell you, I play MLB The Show all the time, and throwing the knuckleball is really tough in MLB The Show.
You should watch Chris Ella try to hit a knuckleball at softball. I have a hard time hitting it, too. It's tough.
That's how I swing, yeah.
But just off of when
dances.
when Skip Schumacher's clubhouse is like, we didn't know how to prepare for it. Like we asked, we had a hitters meeting. We tried, no one really had any insight. Can't cue the machine up for it. It's an advantage for sure.
And one last thing, Chris and I were talking about this, or Adam and I were talking about this yesterday, but Matt Waldron, they brought up Randy Vasquez, saw what he had. He's not a starter, so Matt Waldron bought some time. Joe Musgrove gets injured. He buys some more time. And what he's done with that time is got better. And he has, I think, solidified. I said last night through the All-Star break, but I can't see him leaving the rotation unless he completely falls off.
Well, speaking of MLB The Show, Matt,
Yes.
they have increased the pitcher rating for Jeremiah Estrada from 57 to 99, the best in the game based on his current 13 consecutive Major League Baseball record strikeout streak.
I played with him last night.
Did you? Okay.
got
And
his
he
new
plays
card.
with him, and he was more excited about getting to play with his own card on his game because he's a huge gamer than anything else. The attention, the rewards, the potential riches that came with striking out a Major League record 13 batters in a row. I don't know if this is a fluke, if this is sustainable. He's so unproven in Major League Baseball. He's throwing great, so I'm not going to ask you to speculate down the road for Jeremiah Estrada, but I will ask you all to speculate on this record, which currently stands at 13 and could even go higher if he continues to strike people out. It is the most it's ever happened since 1961 in baseball. Will this record stand the test of time? And I'll let you determine kind of what that means in Major League Baseball. But is this one that's going to be in the record books for a while, Chris?
Tom Seaver was the first guy to strike out 10 in a row. He did it against the Padres in 1970. That stood the test of time. I mean, it's still the record for a starting pitcher in one game. So, yeah, I think 13 is going to be there for a while. And we keep saying it's the most since 1961. It very well might be the most ever. We just don't know before 1961. And I said yesterday, I had just the best time watching him set that record on Tuesday night. I am known to myself and others for never staying through the ninth inning of a game. I have to beat traffic and get home. But I wasn't going anywhere Tuesday night. I stayed to watch him try to break that record. And the more I've thought about it, I've actually seen a no-hitter pitched. I've actually seen, a couple of grand slams. I've actually seen some other remarkable things happen in baseball. Never saw that before. I don't think we're going to see that for a while. This is awesome. So you're right. It could just be one moment in time, but hopefully he keeps building on this.
Craig, how do you put this Jeremiah Estrada streak into context? And will it still be the record when we're looking up 10, 15 years from now?
Okay, I want to make 3 points very quickly. One, Seaver is the true record because that was 10. Wasn't that to start the game?
No, it was to actually finish
the game. Okay,
The last
but nonetheless,
10 outs,
a
yes.
starting pitcher striking out 10 straight in a game.
Right.
13 is over the course of 3 appearances, of course. So there's that. 2, no, it's not going to stand the test of time because Estrada is going to break it himself when he strikes out his next batter
Yes.
on Friday. So it's not even going to last 2 days. It's going to be broken on Friday. And after that, someone else will break it because the previous was 11 and it was set last year. So, yes, we talk about 61, but 11 was set last year and tied last year. So as long as you have the type of relievers throwing 103 with Funko balls, somebody is going to come along and strike out the side 6 straight times.
Yeah, Braden, there is a change in the game in terms of batters who will still try to hit home runs with 2 strikes and relief pitchers who will be max effort and are only expected to face 3 batters. There are going to be more strikeouts in the game. So does that place the Jeremiah Estrada streak into some different context for you?
Yeah, I that's exactly what I was thinking when you originally asked the question to the group. Was I just with this style of baseball and guys swinging out of their shoes a lot of times and relievers just emptying the tank, as you mentioned, only having to face 3 batters and we talked about with Waldron not seeing these guys a lot. I mean, there's a reason why bullpen guys are bullpen guys because you don't get to see them a lot, and when you see them a lot, you start to hit them, but you don't have to worry about that when you're facing a guy like Estrada because. Or when you have a guy like Estrada pitching because he's not going to face guys multiple times. So I can see it being broken. I agree with Craig. I bet you he strikes out the first guy he sees the next outing he is in, whether that be Friday or Saturday. That might end it there at 14. That'd be my prediction. But I don't think it's going to stand the test of time. I think somebody else will break it just because of the whole reliever thing and going across a couple of games being different than Seaver doing.
All somebody has to do is hit a little dribbler in front
That's
of the
what I'm
mound.
thinking, like
I
a little
know, but-
nubber.
I mean, I think it's going to hold up for a while. I really do. I think this is really remarkable.
I mean, he hasn't had to face Luis Ariz, of course. In the
That's
streak,
right.
that makes a difference. If you have to go up,
There you go.
back control, short swing guy, no one's been able to put the bat on the ball, Matt.
I love what Jeremiah Estrada is doing for a couple reasons, and we had him on the show on Friday. And
Name
he's-
dropper.
Yeah, sick.
name dropper for Friday. By the way, we'll have most likely Luis Ariz tomorrow, so I'll drop another name.
Name dropper.
Ask him if he thinks he could hit Jeremiah Estrada.
That's
Ooh,
a great
good
question. That's a
Chris.
great
Chris.
question.
That's on you.
Good question.
I love that because he said that it was kind of a wake up call when he was released or DFA'd by the Cubs, and he's making. I love when guys make the most of their opportunities because you might only get this one chance with the Padres to claim a role on the team, and then you're out of. If you don't, you're out of baseball forever. But Jeremiah Estrada, he's must see right now. You have to watch him. I was looking yesterday. Obviously, he wasn't going to come in the game with them down so much, but every time I see him coming into the game, I'm stopping, I'm watching, and I want to see what happens. I think Chris is right. This is going to stand for a little bit because he's going to A, extend it, and B, a little bunt or a nubber or whatever can get someone on base.
And Andy, we barely know anything about him. I mean, Palm Desert High School, Coachella Valley native. He seems like a fun guy, though. Easy to root for.
He's so fun. I read that story too in the UT this morning. I think Jeff Sanders did it about MLB The Show, and I don't play that, but it's so fun to see how excited he is. Just the same way that he was excited about Pitching Ninja, putting him on Twitter the other day, just the same way that he went to In-N-Out after he broke or set the major league record for it the other night. So really down to earth guy. People might not know that he almost died of COVID. I mean, that's probably a little hyperbolic. He was hospitalized and spent quite a while in the hospital, unable to, real bad oxygen issues, just unable to do much of anything for, I think, a few months. Like he was in a really bad place. And so he had Tommy John surgery. He got really, really in a bad spot from COVID. So he went through some dark times, to Scraby's point here, before kind of being able to turn stuff around and unlock something new here with the Padres.
I did not know that. I saw that he didn't pitch in 2020. It said due to COVID. I just assued it was because they shut down the minor leagues and
no,
he didn't get to pitch, but he was actually unavailable.
He lost that year, I
Yeah.
think, obviously, like they did, in terms of losing that COVID year. But no, he very severely got a case of COVID and ended up hospitalized for quite a while.
It's our 97.3 The Fan Padres Roundtable, presented commercial-free by San Diego Roundtable Pizza. And I kind of agonized about what Manny Machado question I wanted to ask. I definitely wanted to talk about Manny, but I didn't know exactly how to phrase it without, loading the question. So here's what I came up with. And, Braden, why don't we start with you? So Manny Machado obviously has not put up Manny Machado-like numbers. He is currently on an 8-game hitting streak, but it's not, as Chris kind of said, it's kind of one of those 1-for-4 type of streaks. Do you think that Manny Machado is at least heading in the right direction toward breaking out and becoming Manny Machado, or is he actually kind of not getting closer to being the player that we're used to seeing on the field?
I think he's getting closer.
Okay.
Based on what we've seen out of him the last, couple of series, I think he's hitting the ball a lot harder than he was at the beginning of the season. I think he's feeling more comfortable, obviously, with his elbow, and he's spraying the field. But the other thing too, I mean, if you look at his baseball savant numbers, his numbers are all a lot higher. He's hitting the ball a lot harder. He's finding different spots. He's getting comfortable, it looks like, and it's as much as it's sometimes people poke fun at the phrase that he had in the clubhouse last year, a couple years ago, I'm Manny Bleeping Machado. I mean, he is. And here's the thing. It's like you invested money in him for him to be that guy. And I'm not worried about the stars on the team as I am about some other things, because you paid them the money that you paid them for them to be stars. You let them be stars. And the other thing, too, is with Manny, we've seen it every year. I mean, I said for probably 1 year, he doesn't get out to hot starts. I mean, I think I saw it a couple of weeks ago. He had the exact same numbers through the first 30-something games as he did last year through his first 30 games played. I mean, he is very consistently not a fast starter. So I think he's turning it around. I don't think he's cooked like a lot of people want to say every time he doesn't play well, but I think you're about to start to see Manny go on a little bit of a run.
Craig, Braden's right. The numbers behind the numbers are mostly good for Manny Machado, except for the one that continues to be a concern. Ground balls, not getting the ball in the air consistently. How much of a red flag is that for you? And do you see Manny heading in the right direction or still regressing here?
Yeah, this is the unlock, is loft, right? Like he's just not lofting the ball. And when we say he's starting to hit like Manny Machado, no, he's starting to hit like mid-late career Eric Hosmer is what he's doing. He's, kind of a 260-ish average with a whole bunch of ground balls and some line drives through the infield. That's not what you pay him $35 million a year for. You pay him for the bombs and the elite defense. He's still providing the elite defense. He made an error yesterday, and it was, his first since August? So that actually proves the point of what a great defender he is, when you have your first error. But honestly, it's until he lifts the ball, he's not Manny Machado. Once he starts lifting the ball again, then he's back.
Annie, it's we've gone through kind of this series of years with Manny Machado, and he always has eventually become the player that he says he's going to be. Do you have any concern that that's not going to happen?
So I think that he's moving closer in terms of always tinkering and finding a way to get himself back on track. I don't think that any of that is lost here. What I will say, and what Manny has said himself, is the elbow continues to be a bit of a bother for him. It continues to be something that he's working back from. He doesn't exactly feel totally like himself yet. He said to media earlier this year that he doesn't know if he's going to be fully back until 2025 in terms of just the health of it, and how it feels when he's playing with it. So I think he has good days and bad days, and I think that's what's maybe hurting him a little bit right now. Can he get there? Absolutely. But that elbow might be a concern going forward, at least for this year.
Matt, what are your Manny Machado thoughts here?
Yeah, I agree with Annie that his elbow has to be hurting him more than he's leading on. And we seem to forget that Manny played through a pretty terrible ankle injury a few years ago when I think it was in Colorado, that he stepped on the base, and he came back, 12 days after that, and he was doing everything he could. He told us when we went to another name dropper moment, but he told us that he was doing treatment on it every single night. He's going to bed with stuff on his ankle. Manny Machado doesn't complain about injury, and he's not going to use injury as an excuse. But I think we need to at least acknowledge the fact that he is somewhat injured, because he came back this year when we didn't even think he was going to be there for the first month, but he was there game 1. And I don't know why people give Manny such a hard time, because he is out there every single day that he can. And we say it on Gwen and Chris, your best trait is availability, and Manny's available.
Well, Chris, and Woods would rail against it, but a lot of people say Manny doesn't look like he cares out there because of some of the body mannerisms out on the field. And I will push back on that. I know Manny Machado cares deeply. He doesn't care about what you think about whether he cares or not, right. Which is like Jerks and Profar. He always looks like he cares. But does it matter what you look like you care if you actually do care? And do you think that he's headed in the right direction?
I'm concerned.
Okay.
Here's the first thing. We can blame all this on Luis Arise, because he has not homered since Arise got to the Padres. And that is just a strange coincidence, I'm sure.
Arise in the fall.
Right, thank you. His last home run was the day before Arise got here. So that's got to change. Here's my concern, the elbow. I'm not seeing consistent line drives to right center field in the air. And to me, until I start seeing, flyouts to deep right field, right center, and the ball in the air, then I'm going to be concerned that he's not there yet. He does have the ultimate confidence that, at the end of the season, the numbers will be there. They always are. I do love the fact that he posts every day, as he likes to say. And what we actually say on the show is your best ability is your availability.
That's it.
Okay,
so if you're
Coach.
going to
That's
quote
it.
the show, please
Coaches basketball,
be accurate.
great, and
Yes.
coaches
But
football.
yeah, I am a little concerned
true.
until I see it. Some good hard contact the other way. I'm not going to think that he's ready yet.
All right, we got breaking fake news in on the Padres Roundtable. Rob Manfred has just moved the trade deadline up from the end of July to the end of May, and A.J. Preller only has 24 hours to make a move.
I was worried there for a
I
second.
always appreciate Ben's half-hour point.
Yes.
Yes. The
roundtable
45-minute
question.
seventh inning stretch is
This
great.
isn't even the seventh inning stretch yet.
That's what I'm most excited about.
You're grinding through
My
the fifth
point
inning
is,
right now, Annie.
if AJ did have to make a move in the next 24 hours, where do you focus on at this point in the Padres roster? Like, what would you have to do right now if you had to make a move, your last move? Where is it that the Padres need the most help, Annie?
I'm going starting rotation,
Yeah.
and especially if Yu Darvish has a hamstring issue that lingers longer than anyone thinks. No, I'm going starting rotation. I think, look, you've improved the lineup. These guys need to hit. The ones that aren't hitting, and hopefully the ones that are don't fall off too hard. And the bullpen, hopefully they've got enough arms in there. I go starting rotation.
I mean, I agree with you because you always need more pitching, especially starting pitching. But they just finished an entire homestand in which they scored barely 2 runs per game. Matt, is there any thought that they need another bat somewhere in this lineup?
Where are they going to put it?
I don't know.
They have so many
In the infield.
log jams. No, they don't have any
I think we
room
should
in
get a
the
shortstop.
infield.
Yeah, they need a shortstop.
Oh, do they? Do they? Well, I mean, Fernando's next up because that's the reason he's playing like he is, because he's not playing shortstop. I think you have to go with pitching. You can never have too much pitching, and the Padres have had some injuries. They need to keep their pitching up because if their offense isn't going to perform on a day-in, day-out basis, they need good pitching.
Bat or arm, Braden?
Well, I mean, reality is they need what every team needs at the deadline: a power bat, a bullpen piece, and a starting piece. So out of the one move you'd have to make, I mean, just to be a little different, I agree with them. I think starting pitching is probably the weakest spot. the middle of the bullpen, I think, is not very good. We talked about this on the show a couple days ago about what's been the most concerning thing to the first 50-something games. And to me, it was the bullpen, because they were supposed to be like, on paper, the asset of this team. And sure, Suarez and Estrada is doing the job, but in between is just not a lot of consistency. But I'm going to go with, just for sake of argument, I'm going to go with a power bat. And for me, I mean, look at all the numbers on this team. The slugging percentage for all of the players is very poor, with the exception of Profar, who's having a career year. And it's great that he's having a career year. And I hope he can keep it up. And I hope this is the best year he has ever had in his career. But it's just him. And if you go through the roster, I mean, if you really think about it, you go through the roster, they don't have any power bats. They got Fernando, who to me is a junior power bat. I think he will be a power bat when he's at his prime, 28, 29 years old. But he's still 25 years old. He hasn't even gotten his man strength yet. Manny Machado and Xander Bogaerts, those are two line drive hitters. They were never big pop guys. When they hit the ball out, it's because they hit the ball hard. You go through. Merrill's a base hit guy. Arise is a base hit guy. Jerickson Profar is a base hit guy. Maybe a little bit of pop of a Camposano. You got no real pop in the lineup. So for me, it would be to bring in a big bat. Where do you put him? I'm going to be honest with you. If you bring in a big bat, this is going to, I'm sure the chat is already going to be upset at me.
Hot take alert.
You get a power bat, and let's just say everybody's ready to go. I think you got to take Kim out of the lineup, and he's got to be a defensive replacement, because that's where he's at right now. So that's where you would have to put him. You would have to move Bogaerts back to short, Cronenworth at second, or maybe Arise, because Arise likes playing second, whatever. Figure out what you want to do, and then you move him into the DH spot. So what happens there is you get more depth in your lineup. I'm sure you hurt feelings, right? Because everybody loves Ha-Seong Kim. It's great. He's a good player. He's a great defensive shortstop. But you would have to make some of those tough decisions if you want to add another bat to the lineup. But as you mentioned, they obviously need a little bit more pop.
Credit to Braden for actually having a take there, even though Ha-Seong Kim was the only player who actually homered in the series, I believe.
That's right.
That's right.
The Marlins, but for Craig and Chris, do you both agree? Is it an arm like most of us has said? And is Braden's point right? Even if you added someone, whether it's an arm, a starting arm, or a bat, it's very hard to decide who to take out. No one's playing bad enough to just jettison, but no one's playing so good that you can just feel like, other than, like a couple of guys, that they couldn't be replaced as well, like Ha-Seong Kim.
Well, yeah, I also appreciate that Braden came with a solution to the answer of where do you put a power bat, because the Arise trade is a lock-in there. Before, there was an opportunity to add a power bat at DH. But once you added Arise, now you have to say, okay, who are you going to sit? Bogaerts right now is the obvious easy out because he is injured. You assume that he'll be back later in the season. Anyone ever could add a starting pitcher. The question is, how democratic are the Padres really going to be? Their worst performing starter this year has been Joe Musgrove. And now their second worst is almost kind of a King Waldron tie, the way that Waldron has been pitching. So whenever I hear add a starting pitcher, I'm also just hearing, well, just toss Waldron aside. King's the guy who could go to the bullpen and immediately give you another impact arm in the pen.
Who's done it before.
Correct. If you made that move down the road or in the playoffs, et cetera. The Padres aren't ready to do that right now. So I'm going to go to one spot that no one has mentioned yet, and it's the worst performing position on the team. Catcher. Luis Camposano for the last month has hit just like Kyle Higashioka, which is not at all. He's hit 100 with no power for a month straight. By the way, he doesn't play very good defense either. So I've been a big Luis Camposano fan, but as I said on the show yesterday, I'm only biased against poor performance. I'm not biased against any individual player, just bad performance. And Camposano's performance has been bad. Higashioka has been a complete automatic out. And if you wanted to upgrade a position on this team offensively, catcher is the first place to look.
Chris, any thoughts on an upgrade?
Yes. Nobody's mentioned it yet, but I know it's in everybody's mind. This team, despite winning 2 out of 3 over the Marlins, cannot hit left-handed pitching. They just absolutely can't. They scored maybe 4 or 5 runs in this series, a couple of home runs. That's about all they got against the Marlins. Prior to that, they were shut out in 5 of 6 games against left-handed pitching. That's almost impossible to do. And I don't know why Manny and Fernando can't hit left-handed pitching all of a sudden. I don't know why. I mean, Camposano, by the way, has 4 hits this season against left-handed pitching. How is that possible for guys that are right-handed to be able to not ever get a hit against a left-handed pitcher? So here's who you go out and acquire. As long as his hand is not broken out for the season, Pete Alonso, stick him on first base, get a rise back at DH, and ride that all the way to the deep into the playoffs. Thank you. Everything's solved.
Loving the takes on the Padres Roundtable 97.3 The Fan, presented by San Diego Roundtable Pizza. Now, Annie, it is time for our 7th
Yay! All right.
question of the day. As we learned yesterday, Mike Schilt does not like it when you call this a roller coaster of a season. So today's 7th inning stretch question is, what is your all-time favorite amusement park ride? And please be
very
as
good.
specific as possible. You can go any of the local amusement parks, anything you visited. Go, high speed, low speed. What's your favorite amusement park ride?
Annie's a thrill seeker, isn't she?
Yeah, I love.
She loves the roller
coaster
coaster.
rides. I love scary roller coaster rides. I love rides that drop me right from the top to the bottom.
Really?
But because we got into such a big thing about this on the Annie and Nelson show, I'm gonna go with just Tower of Terror. It's just a treat. I love it. I'll go on it over and over. It's lovely.
Have you been on the Have you been on the new one?
The new
The
one
Guardians
is
of
like
the Galaxy.
Yeah,
Galaxy.
it's the same.
But the drop is the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you been on the new one?
I have not since it turned over.
Oh.
Yeah.
Scraby?
Annie, when
You
the
would like
show's
to
over,
say-
you can just go jump off the roof. It's pretty much the same thing.
Whoa, whoa.
I mean, you can have a parachute.
He allowed you a parachute.
Brandon,
nice.
don't we have like tickets to? Shouldn't I be gifted something?
I
here
know.
to
I
be
know
able
the
to go to
building gets Disney
Disneyland?
tickets, but the
That's the rumor.
yeah
now
part.
that I've talked about it so much,
I've never
so
seen
much
it,
pub.
actually.
Yeah, well, there's
I have
people in the
received
other.
tickets for Disneyland before
Yeah.
from the station. So.
I know they're around. They magically get taken up by a lot of people around here that are not us.
My favorite amusement park ride, I love roller coasters. The one thing I cannot stand is the one where you go all the way to the top and you drop. I'm not a fan of nothing in front of
That's
me.
what she just said. The
I
one
know.
likes.
She loves it, and I hate
Go to
it.
Disneyland with Annie then.
There is. I went to Busch Gardens, Tampa, one time, and there was this ride called Montu. And the reason I remember it is because it was one of my first roller coasters I've ever been on, like big person roller coasters. And we used to just go over all the alligators below.
Wait,
so
real
you would come
alligators?
down and you would real alligators right below your feet. And it was awesome. I went on that ride maybe 10 times. So I'm going to say that one.
That's
Great.
amazing.
Well, I mean, there's a ride that I can't say it's my favorite just because I've only been on it twice and it was a long time ago. But that Expedition Everest ride over in Disney World was pretty awesome. But my all-time favorite ride that I will go on all the time is Big Thunder Mountain at
nice
Disneyland.
one.
I'll go on that all the time, all day, every day. That's probably my favorite.
That's my maximum roller coaster.
I was going to say
thrill.
that ride has the ups and downs of this Padres season.
That's
A little
right.
bit
Yeah,
up,
yeah,
a little bit
exactly.
down.
Big
Yeah,
Thunder
absolutely.
Mountain,
Yeah.
a.k.a. the Padres 2024 season.
Yeah,
It's
there
the
you go.
wildest ride in the wilderness.
It is.
There you go.
Keep your hands and arms inside the view.
That's
Thank
right.
you.
Welcome to
Right.
Padres
I'll
baseball.
go Space Mountain. I'll be very
Space
simple.
Mountain's
In the
a good
dark.
I'll go
one.
Space Mountain. Yeah, I like that one.
Craig or Chris?
My real favorite's called X. It's at Magic Mountain, but I wanted to get a shout out in for Mr. Toad's Wild Ride at Disneyland. I always enjoyed that. And the ride I'm scared to death of because I went on it once and I'll never step near it again is Emperor at SeaWorld. Because that one takes you way too high and
I
drops
love
you
that
way
one.
too far. I figured you would.
The only thing I don't like is that it's over a parking lot, and so you're like, it's.
Oh,
That's
that
the
one
only
left
scary
my
thing.
stomach up on the 25th floor.
I'm not a thrill seeker at all. I think I'm more about the nostalgia when I go on rides,
Yeah.
and I love a nice, cool, dark ride. So Pirates of the Caribbean
Yeah,
is
you
always-
go.
is
That's
always my. It's just
excellent.
enough of a thrill at the beginning when you make the drop, and then you
right.
just
5-foot drop.
You sit in the air conditioning and just ride.
The
through
real
ride and
problem is
relax
now
the
that you
whole way.
mentioned that,
That's a
I'm going to
great
have
one.
the song Yo Ho in my mind the rest of the week.
Or
Kid-
Haunted Mansion,
Kid,
also.
yeah,
a great
that's
one.
a great one.
Haunted
That
Mansion.
ride's hilarious. Kid nostalgia, the Cars ride's great. Seeing going through Cars Land's phenomenal.
All right, let's get back to some Padres talk here.
Do we have to?
Yeah, okay, so we just talked about
AKA
hypothetical
Big Thunder
A.J.
Mountain.
Preller moves. 10 years as general manager. I want to bring up the point. Padres are a game above 500, even though they've shed nearly $100 million in payroll. Got the team to the NLCS a couple of years ago, but given the context of everything, is he doing his best job as a general manager, Chris, this year?
This year.
This year. Is this the best job he's done so far?
I think you could make a case for that. But here's, Craig has been on this for a while, and I've kind of jumped on this bandwagon. I went back middle of June of 2022. It's over 300 games ago. This team has been 500. That's with Juan Soto and Manny and everybody. That's without Juan Soto. That's with Bob Melvin. That's without Bob Melvin. It doesn't seem to be that this team can get away from 500. So, is this his best job? I don't know. They're at 500, which is where they've been for 2.5 years.
But, Craig, doesn't it have to either kind of be 2022 or 2024? Because 2020, I mean, they had a good short season record, but the moves he made at the deadline were awful in hindsight. The rest of the years really haven't been good, and he had all kinds of resources in 2022 to work with that he doesn't have this year. Is this peak A.J. Preller this year?
It's a hell of a resume you just laid out there. It is. I think this is the best job he's done. I think that much like the 2016 to 2019 period of his general managerial career, when you put restrictor plates on A.J. Preller, force him to be creative, force him to look for solutions in the shadows, I think he's pretty effective at doing that. And then when you give him an unfettered budget and unlimited opportunity, he makes gigantic mistakes that can haunt the franchise for years and maybe a decade to come. So the Cease trade is undoubtedly a good trade. The Arise trade is undoubtedly a good trade. And I just think overall the roster is better constructed.
But Braden, he's been a pretty good bargain shopper. I mean, we know he's a good talent evaluator in terms of the draft and minor leagues. And he's done a nice job on the fringes with the Donovan Solanos of the world, David Peralta, Jurickson Profar for $1 million. These have all been really good decisions so far.
I think this year he's done a great job for the cards that he was dealt, right? I mean, he's got to stay underneath the competitive balance tax. That's something we didn't even discuss during the trade part. I mean, can they afford a starting pitcher? They're like $13 million away from hitting that mark. And for me, I can't believe a team that has done so much to stay underneath that mark to just blow it at the trade deadline to try to add all these pieces. So they might not make a starting pitcher move because they might not be able to afford one financially, and I know you're going to inherit half the contract or whatever it is, but in terms of the hand he was dealt, I think he's done a really good job. Has he always been this great? Not really. Has he been poor at making a complete roster? I think it's fair to say yes, but this year, addressing a need in Arise and bringing him in, addressing a need in Cease and bringing him in, two guys that don't cost you a lot of money, getting the Marlins to pay for Luis Arise's entire contract this year except for the minimum you have to pay. I mean, he has done a phenomenal job. And as you mentioned, with Solano and Profar and some of these budget moves have been great. And you know what? He's trusted in his young guys to come up and do well too. And Jackson Merrill's done a great job for the Padres also. So record-wise, as Chris said, I mean, you are what you are, and it's 500, but what he has been given, he's made a pretty competitive team for a team that, on paper, going into spring training, was expected to come in fourth.
And Braden makes a good point on the luxury tax. The longer you wait, the less of a prorated salary you have to pay. Perhaps the more expensive of a player you can afford if you wait until late July as opposed to pulling the trigger earlier in the year. Thoughts, Matt Scraby, on A.J. Preller?
Yeah, I love the creativity. I love that he was able to bring in Dylan Cease for $8 million. I love that he was able to flip Drew Thorpe so quickly and block the Yankees from getting Dylan Cease, according to all reports, Luis Ariz. And Braden's right. Getting the Marlins to pay for most of his salary is incredible. And I also agree with Craig that when he has an unlimited budget, he might think too big and he might spend too much. But when he has to be creative and he has to think outside the box, I think that's when he does his best work. And this year, he's done a really good job.
Annie, what do you think?
I think this is his best year in terms of that, like agreeing with all your points. You know, the Jeremiah Estradas, the Luis Ariz, Dylan Cease, Donovan Solano, but I think you just can't look at it in a silo. Like, they are in this position because of some of the moves that they've made earlier that didn't work out. And you're not going to hit on every move. It's ridiculous to think that these guys are going to hit on every move in the front office. But there are some that I think would have freed up an opportunity to get some other players in on the roster that also could have helped had they not been made earlier.
It's our 97.3 The Fan Padres Roundtable, presented by San Diego Roundtable Pizza. Final few minutes, I want to address a story that was in the news this week. We talked about it on our show. I'm sure you guys have as well. The decision by Major League Baseball to officially incorporate Negro League statistics into the MLB record book this week. I said, to me, it makes logical sense because, I mean, even the American and National Leagues didn't compete against each other back then. And from every bit of evidence we have, the competition level was just as good. So why not combine them all together? But they weren't the same leagues. Do you agree with that decision? Is it okay to even disagree with that decision right now, Chris, in our current climate?
No, it's not. But I think, I like it. It's going to take me a while to get used to it. But, they finally got Barry Bonds' name off the top rung of the home run list. So I think that's what they were really after.
It's interesting. Eno Saris joined us, Craig, and said every number, every record, anything in Major League Baseball requires context. And if you're not looking at a record book without putting it into context, you really aren't understanding baseball. And I thought that was real wisdom. And whether you look at the record book and see Josh Gibson or Ty Cobb atop the averages, everything has to be placed into context, including Ty Cobb's career, Josh Gibson's career, Luis Arraez versus Tony Gwynn. Everything comes with contextual implications.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think, I guess what I would say is that I find the outrage about this to be entirely contrived because it's coming from people who, if you asked them, would have absolutely no idea who is third in history and on-base percentage. And, oh, my God, they've replaced who's third in history and on-base percentage. Well, who was that before? I don't know. And why would you care, nerd? So, from that standpoint, people who are getting mad about it, they're just getting it's like some contrived cultural grievance nonsense. The only person who should care about this is somebody who is deeply involved in statistics. And on one level, I could say, well, MLB was playing and the Negro Leagues were playing at the same time. They were separate. They were not playing one another. Therefore, why would you have them in the same table? They weren't playing one another. However, having said that, it also does not say on the American League statistics in the 1920s, non-integrated, only white on white. So seeing as there is not that context, in the end, this is simply a matter of a historical recording, in which case everyone's numbers should be recorded.
Braden, you've been unafraid to share opinions. Your thoughts here?
I like the move. I think it's great. I mean, if I were to pull up Baseball Reference, a couple of days ago and then do it after they add all the stats, I wouldn't even notice the difference of who's at the top and who's not. And to be honest with you, if you went through and be like, oh, if you had to click on the guy's name and it's like, well, some of them from the Negro Leagues, I wouldn't even care. It's like they did it at the highest level of professional baseball at the time, and might as well include it. But we're talking about a league that used to reset your stats if you got traded to the other league, which was idiotic, right? I mean, they're still playing.
They still do that?
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not after they integrated more interleague.
Matt, for me, we're just celebrating more great baseball players.
Exactly.
Ultimately.
And I hate to bring it back to MLB The Show, but I'm going to bring it back to MLB The Show. They have a great, I guess it's like a mini game where you go through and you learn about the Negro Leagues and you play as some of those players and you do some of the things. So I've been learning a lot about that. Had no idea Josh Gibson hit 466 in a single season, I believe it was.
Yeah.
But he's now the record holder, and I think it's great. I mean, put everyone together and let it happen.
Annie, you get the final 30 seconds.
I think it's fantastic to celebrate Negro League players. They are incredible players. They should have been celebrated all along the way that they are now. I've seen the think pieces from black players as well saying, let's not pretend that they were allowed to play in the major leagues in baseball at the time. They weren't. So you have to also be mindful of that and allow for that to be the case, where let's not just pat ourselves on the back and pretend like they were allowed to be integrated. They were not. And so that's the important piece to remember here too.
I would just like all of the home runs from the Negro League to be recorded, which means that Tony Gwynn Jr. of the Homestead Grays now gets to add one to
We
his
don't
total.
know that.
Adam
have
Jones
not
confirmed
seen
it on our show. That
We got
he
no
did
video
it.
evidence of it.
Why did we
Tony
only
pay
see
him?
the last 5 steps?
I
That's
know.
what I want to know.
I gotta see the Tony Gwynn
You want
Jr.
to see
pump.
it, huh?
It did happen.
right.
Good to have everyone back together after our
fun.
week off. Good to have a new couple of cast members today. Thank you for filling in.
Thanks for having us.
We'll see what 6 people we can line up in the chairs next Thursday after the Padres visit Kansas City for 3. and Anaheim for 3 to take on the LA Angels. Some interleague play this week, so we can all underreact or overreact as appropriate next
Or
Thursday.
3 and 3 react.
On our next round.
Ride the roller coaster. Just
Big
spoil
Thunder
the
Mountain
cream
of
at this point.
Major
yeah.
League Baseball, San Diego Padres.
That is it for us. For Annie Heilbrunn, Matt Scraby, Braden Soprenet, Craig Elston, Chris Ello. I'm Ben Higgins. Thanks for joining us on the 97.3 The Fan Padres Roundtable, presented by San Diego Roundtable Pizza. That pizza is winking at me. I'm going to go over and have a couple of slices right now. Have a great
Great
rest
job,
of your day,
Ben.
everybody.
Good
Thank
job,
you.
Ben.
Yay.